Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so we know some of you listening are already landlords, or maybe you're thinking seriously about becoming one.
hmm
And let's face it, there's just so much information out there, it can feel, well, overwhelming.
Totally. It's easy to get bogged down.
Exactly. So today we're going to try and cut through that noise. We're aiming to give you the really essential steps, the core things you need to do to protect your property, your finances, and honestly, your sanity.
Yeah, absolutely. We've looked at a resource you pointed us to, focused specifically on landlord protection, particularly insurance, but it covers more ground too.
Right.
And it's got some solid advice, everything from, checking out the property initially to lease agreements, finding tenants, insurance, obviously, and keeping the place up.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the absolute must-knows from this. Whether you're just dipping your toe in or you've been doing this for a while, we want you to feel informed and prepared.
It's not just about dodging problems, is it? It's about setting yourself up for a successful, maybe even less stressful rental business.
Okay, let's dive in then. The first big thing that jumped out from the source material was doing your homework before you even buy. Proper due diligence. It's more than just liking the look of the place, yeah.
Oh, definitely. Much more. The resource really emphasizes going deep, like way beyond just a surface glance.
Oh, so.
Well, it specifically talks about getting a certified home inspector involved.
Yeah.
And this isn't just ticking a box.
Right.
It's a really proactive step. Think about it. They can uncover hidden nightmares. Stuff like seriously outdated electrical systems, plumbing that's about to give up the ghost, or even, structural problems.
Things you definitely wouldn't spot just walking through.
Exactly. And missing those. That can mean huge repair bills hitting you right after you've bought the place. A nasty surprise.
Yeah, that sounds awful. The source also gave a bit of a heads up about certain properties, like ones sold as is or in areas with lots of empty rentals. Why the caution there?
Good question. So, as is properties.
Hmm.
Well, that term itself can be a bit of a red flag. It often means the seller knows there are issues, possibly big ones, and they're basically saying, not my problem anymore.
So buyer beware, essentially.
Very much so. Those problems and the costs, they become yours. And then high vacancy areas. Look, a lower price might seem tempting initially,
Sir?
but it could signal underlying problems. Maybe with the property itself, maybe the neighborhood isn't great, or maybe there just isn't much demand for rentals there.
Which hits your bottom line.
Directly.
Here.
It makes it harder to find good tenants, keep them, and ultimately it impacts your return on investment. So that initial bargain might not be such a bargain after all.
Okay, that makes total sense. So let's say you've done your due diligence, found a solid property.
Yeah.
The next critical piece, according to the source, is the lease agreement. It sounds like this is, well, fundamental.
It absolutely is. The resource calls it the bedrock of the landlord-tenant relationship, and that feels right. This document needs to be crystal clear. No ambiguity. It has to spell out, the rent amount, exactly when it's due, who's responsible for what maintenance.
Like who fixes a leaky tap?
Precisely. And also, any specific rules about how the tenant can use the property. Pets, smoking, home businesses. It all needs to be in there.
And the source really seemed to push getting legal advice on this, didn't it? Not just using a template you found online.
It did. And that's really sound advice. Having a legal professional either draft it for you or at least review a template you're considering ensures two key things. One, it complies with all your local and state laws, which can be tricky. And two, it properly protects your interests as the landlord.
Are there examples, like specific state things?
Yeah, the resource actually mentioned Pennsylvania, for instance. Landlords there have a legal duty to keep the property safe and habitable. And making sure that kind of obligation and how you meet it is clearly reflected in the lease. That's crucial. You don't want legal trouble down the line because something wasn't clear.
And it's not just the big stuff like rent, is it? The source mentioned details like security deposits, late fees, how you handle disagreements.
Absolutely vital. Things like how much is the deposit? Under what conditions is it returned? What exactly happens if rent is late? What's the process if there's a dispute?
Getting all that nailed down up front.
Exactly. Having that clarity right from the start can head off so many potential arguments later. It just sets clear expectations for everyone involved.
Okay, solid property. Check. Rock solid lease. Check. Now, who are you actually letting into your property? The source stresses rigorous tenant screening. What does that really involve?
This is super important for protecting your investment and, frankly, ensuring you actually get paid regularly. It minimizes risks.
So what are the steps?
The material breaks it down nicely. You've got credit checks, basically. Does this person handle their finances responsibly?
Makes sense.
Then background checks. Are there any red flags in their criminal history that might pose a risk? Employment verification, can they actually afford the rent based on their income? And finally, checking their rental history. Talking to previous landlords gives you huge insight into how they behaved as tenants before. Were they reliable? Did they cause damage?
It sounds comprehensive. But it can't just be based on your gut feeling about someone, can it? There are laws around this.
That's a critical point the source makes. You absolutely must use standardized screening criteria. Apply the same process, same standards to every single applicant.
Why is that so important?
Objectivity, for one. But crucially, it's about fair housing laws. You have to avoid any hint of discrimination. Treating everyone equally and documenting your process protects you legally.
Okay. The source also mentioned renter's insurance. Now that's for the tenant, right? Why is it good for the landlord if the tenant has it?
Yeah, primarily it covers the tenant stuff, furniture, electronics, clothes, if there's a fire or theft or something.
Right.
But requiring tenants to have it can actually give you an extra layer of liability protection. It's kind of an indirect benefit.
How does that work?
Well, say a tenant's guest trips and gets injured inside the apartment. The tenant's renter's insurance policy might cover some of those initial medical costs,
Ah, I see.
which could make it less likely that the injured guest tries to file a big claim against your landlord insurance policy. This sort of provides a first line of defense.
That's actually quite clever. Okay, so we've got the property vetted, the lease sorted, the tenant screened. Now, the financial safety net insurance. The source was very clear. This isn't the same as regular home insurance.
Yes, absolutely vital distinction. Your standard homeowner's policy that you have on the house you live in, it's generally not designed for a rental property.
Why not?
Because renting introduces different risks. You have tenants living there, there are guests visiting. It's just a different scenario than your own home. That's why you need specific landlord insurance, sometimes called rental property insurance.
Okay, got it. So what does the specific landlord insurance actually cover? What are the key parts?
The resource outlined the main ones. First, there's property damage coverage. This protects the actual building, the structure, against things like fire, storms, vandalism, whatever perils are listed in your specific policy.
Okay, the physical structure.
Then there's medical payments coverage. This can help pay for immediate medical bills if someone gets injured on the property, often regardless of who was technically at fault. It's usually for smaller claims. Helps maybe avoid a lawsuit.
And the big one, liability.
Exactly. Liability protection. This is crucial. If you're sued because someone claims they were injured due to negligence related to your property, this helps cover your legal defense costs and any damages you might have to pay up to the policy limits.
That sounds essential.
It really is. And finally, there's loss of rental income coverage. This one's sometimes overlooked, but can be a lifesaver.
How so?
Well, imagine there's a bad fire and the property is uninhabitable while repairs are being done. You're not getting rent, right?
Right, zero income from it.
This coverage can actually reimburse you for that lost rent during the repair period, helping you maintain your cash flow.
Wow. Yeah, that can make a huge difference.
Definitely. But, and this is a big but, the source emphasized, you have to read your policy carefully. Understand the terms, what's excluded, what the limits are.
Any examples of things to watch out for?
Sure, like many policies have rules about vacancies. If the property is empty for too long, say over 30 or 60 days, some coverages might be reduced or even suspended unless you notify the insurance company. You need to know those details.
The source we looked at even had a link for a risk analysis. It seems like tailoring the coverage is important.
Absolutely. Every property, every landlord situation is a bit different. The risks in one area might not be the same as another. So yeah, getting a proper assessment of your specific needs, matching the insurance to that, that's how you get real peace of mind.
Okay, this is great. We've covered finding the right place, the lease, the tenants, the insurance. The final piece highlighted in the source is ongoing management and upkeep. It's clearly not a set it and forget it deal.
Not at all. The resource really stresses that regular oversight and proactive maintenance are key. They do two things. Protect the actual value of your property long-term and keep your tenants happy. Happy tenants tend to stay longer and cause fewer problems.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, establishing a schedule for routine inspections is a good idea. Catching small issues, a dripping pipe, a loose railing before they become big, extensive repairs.
Makes sense. Prevention is better than cure.
Definitely. And the source also mentioned if all that sounds like too much hassle, especially if you have multiple properties or live far away.
You could hire someone?
Exactly. Using a professional property management company, like the PMR mentioned as a possibility in the source, can take those day-to-day tasks off your plate.
What else is important for ongoing management?
Record keeping. The resource emphasized keeping detailed records of everything, all the maintenance done, every repair, copies of invoices, logs of communication with tenants.
Why is that so critical?
If a dispute ever arises, that documentation is your evidence. It shows you've been fulfilling your responsibilities. It's also vital for proving compliance with legal requirements.
Speaking of legal requirements, you mentioned Pennsylvania's rule about safe and habitable conditions earlier. What happens if a landlord doesn't keep up their end of the bargain there?
Yeah, the consequences can be pretty serious, according to the source's reminder on that point.
Mhm.
Tenants might actually have the legal right to withhold rent until necessary repairs are made,
Wow, really?
depending on the specifics of the law, yeah.
Mm.
And in some situations, they might even be allowed to pay for essential repairs themselves and then deduct that cost from their rent.
So keeping the property well maintained isn't just good practice. It's often a legal must-do.
Precisely. It avoids legal headaches, keeps tenants safer and happier, and protects your property's value. It's all connected.
Okay, so pulling this all together, it really feels like being a good landlord is much more about proactive management and staying on top of your legal duties rather than just collecting rent once a month.
That sums it up perfectly.
Right.
We've talked through these 5 key areas based on the resource, that initial deep dive with due diligence,
Right, before you buy.
crafting those clear, legally sound lease agreements,
Getting the foundation right.
implementing thorough and fair tenant screening,
Finding the right people,
securing the right kind of landlord insurance coverage,
the financial safety net.
and finally committing to that regular oversight and proactive upkeep.
Mm-hmm.
These really are the building blocks. They're not just suggestions. They're fundamental for protecting your investment and hopefully having a less stressful experience overall.
It sounds like preparation, diligence, and ongoing management are the real keys here.
Exactly. And maybe think of it this way, connecting back to what you said at the start about considering this path. Yeah. Owning rental property isn't just owning a thing. It's running a business. A small business, perhaps, but a business nonetheless.
That's a good way to frame it.
Yeah. And like any business owner, you need to think strategically. How do you operate efficiently? How do you manage risk? How do you make sure this venture is actually profitable in your specific market? So maybe the final thought to leave folks with is, looking at your own situation, what are the 1 or 2 things you need to focus on now to make your rental property business a success?